Good morning. We want to welcome you to our former POW Living History Project. My name is Philip Elbaum. I'm a social work clinical manager here at Hines VA Hospital. We're very privileged to have Mr. Bill Beeler with us today, who is an ex-prisoner of war and who is going to share some of his experiences with us. Mr. Beeler, could you please tell us your current age?
79.
79, and I should mention the date of this interview is June 23rd, 2000. And are you service-connected, Mr. Beeler, for any condition at all? Are you getting any compensation from the government?
Yes.
And what are you service-connected for?
Post-traumatic stress.
PTSD. Okay. And what branch of service were you in?
Marine Corps.
And what is your current age now, sir?
79.
79. And how old were you when you went into the service?
18.
18. Was that right after high school?
Yeah, well, 1 year after high school. I had been out a year.
A year. And what did you do in that year prior to going into the service?
Just really waiting on a friend of mine. I lived on a farm, and I was waiting on a friend of mine to graduate from high school who was 1 year behind me. And the two of us then enlisted in June of 1940 in the Marine Corps.
So you enlisted in the Marines prior to Pearl Harbor?
Yes.
Okay. And how long were you in the service prior to being captured?
Approximately 18 months.
18 months.
Yes.
And where were you stationed prior to being captured?
Well, I went through recruit training at San Diego, California, and then we were sent to Honolulu, and we were on a couple of islands south of Honolulu, Palmyra and Johnston Island, and back to Honolulu, and then we went to Wake in August of 1941.
And could you tell us about your experiences on Wake Island prior to being captured?
Yes, we were working there, setting up. The island was not armed. There was no defense of it, and we were busy setting up guns and preparing for defense of the island. And there were also civilian construction workers who were there building an airfield and things of that sort. So we were working 7 days a week and on a very busy schedule from August of 1941 until the start of the war.
And what unit were you in?
1st Defense Battalion.
And what was your job in the service?
In the 1st Defense Battalion, I was a range finder on the 5-inch guns and would call the range down to the gun captain.
I see. And how old were you when you were captured?
December of 41, I would have been 18.
You were 18 years old when you were captured. And could you tell us the circumstances about how you were captured? What was going on?
Well, Wake Island really consisted of 3 islands, Wake, Wilkes, and Peel. And I was on Wilkes Island, which was separated by a lagoon from Wilkes and Peel. And the communications were knocked out shortly after the start of the war. So it was difficult to have a good idea of what was going on every place else on the other islands. And there was a landing attempted by the Japanese on December the 10th, early in the morning, about 4 o'clock. This was repulsed, and that ended that attempt. But on the 23rd of December, they came back and they were determined that time to take the island. They had a number of ships. There were 60-some ships around the island. They had an aircraft carrier. We were dive bombed by their aircraft. And also there were daily bombings coming from a base the Japanese had in the Marshall Islands, which was about 600 miles south of Wake. And they would come over every day around noon and bomb the island. There was a Marine aircraft air wing group on the island, which consisted of 8 planes, and they participated in the defense also. And as far as the defense battalion, we had 5-inch guns, 3-inch anti-aircraft, 50 caliber and 30 caliber machine guns.
And tell us what happened, how you were captured.
Well, the other 2 islands, as I recall, surrendered first. We were not aware of that. The first knowledge that I had myself, Major Devereaux, who was in charge of the Marines, came toward us. He was carrying a white flag, and Japanese were with him. And we were told to throw down our rifles, and the islands had surrendered. So that was the really my first information that of what had taken place and was taking place.
How long were you fighting before you surrendered?
Well, it started December the 7th. We surrendered on the 23rd at 16 days, I guess.
16 days. Was
Yes.
there pretty heavy combat, or was there just bombing?
Well, daily bombings, and there was combat, of course, on the landing attempts. The first attempt, they were not able to get any troops ashore, but the second attempt was successful, and they put men on the island, and there was some skirmishes going on then at that time.
And what happened after you surrendered, to you personally?
Well, we were kept on Wake Island until about the middle of February, and at that time I think that most of the question that with the Japanese had solved was what they were going to do with us. We were told when they came ashore that they had orders not to take any prisoners, and the island was surrendered, of course, because of approximately 1,200 civilian workers on the island who were unarmed. Otherwise, even though it would have been futile and the end result would have been the same, the Japanese would have taken it, there would have been no surrender had there only been military people on the island. And they, after being there until approximately the middle of February, of 1941, 42, let me get this,
1942.
42, certainly. We were taken by ship to Yokohama, Japan, and we did not get off of the ship. We remained on it there because the decision still had not been made where they were going to keep us interned.
What were the conditions on the ship?
Well, we were down below the water line and very crowded. Buckets used for sanitary procedures, and no talking allowed, and the food ration was very sparse. And after being there in Yokohama,
How long was the trip to Yokohama?
I believe it was something like 5 days, 5 or 6 days.
So you were in the hold of a ship without much water, without much food. Were you mistreated at all?
You were always there was the constant going on. If you were walking by the guards, for example, when you went aboard ship, they were always slapping at you, kicking, hitting, swinging a rifle butt. But the main thing was it was quite hot, and there was concern too about submarines, American submarines, whether or not they were operating in the area. We didn't know, but that was a concern. And after staying in Yokohama for 6 or 7 days, we were taken to Shanghai and put in a camp there about 16 miles from downtown Shanghai.
And what were conditions in the camp like?
There, they were very meager. We were told, well, we slept. We were in barracks, which apparently had been used by Japanese troops previously, with a straw tick on a platform raised about 18 inches off the floor, and the food there consisted of approximately a teacup of rice, loosely packed, 3 times a day, and a thin, watery stew, but nothing of any substantial nourishment. And we were told by the Japanese doctor that they were quite aware that the food rations were such as they were, but it was enough to sustain us and we would not starve. And we worked there for a short time repairing the roads, building or filling potholes and so forth. And then we began work on a project about 10 miles from camp that appeared, the Japanese said we were building a replica of Mount Fujiyama, which is one of their mountains near Tokyo that I think has a lot of meaning to them. But in reality, we felt that it was the butt for a rifle range. And we remained in the Shanghai area until May of 1945.
And how were you generally treated? Was there any mistreatment? Did you witness anybody being mistreated?
Yes, there was mistreatment. Their mood would vary depending on how the war was going. If we could usually tell when they had encountered a defeat somewhere, because then they were more surly and more prone to hit you if they had an opportunity. And
were you ever hit or beat?
Yes. I was never given a beating, but I have been hit on numerous occasions, and the best thing to do, to the extent that you could do so, was to avoid them, stay away from them. But of course that was impossible. Sometimes you had to walk near them, and you just should be prepared for a slap, a kick, or whatever they came to their mind.
Was there a lot of hunger and heat?
You were hungry all the time. The temperature in Shanghai is not extreme heat or cold, as I recall it, but those conditions existed, of course. And I think, too, you have to look at the perspective. When you're 18, 19 years old, these things do not affect you like they would if you were older, or the older men. The mental thing, for example, men who were married and had a wife and a family, I'm sure they were were concerned greatly about their welfare, their well-being, and all in all, I think the best thing you could have going for you under those circumstances was to be 19 years old, for example, or 20, whatever.
Did you ever witness anybody being tortured or executed or?
From a distance, one day when we were returning from work, going back to the campground, or to the camp, the area where we stayed, we witnessed an execution off in the distance. We were not close enough to recognize the features, and but we saw people being, I think 5 being beheaded, and
You saw these were American prisoners of war?
yes.
Did you find out why that occurred?
As I recall now, we didn't know for some time, but we later learned that they were American flyers who had been shot down and captured.
And they were beheaded.
Yes.
That must have been a very upsetting thing for you to see.
Well, of course it was. You have to remember too, we used to say that the Japanese, if you're confronted with a situation, you know how you would react to it or go about solving it. The Japanese figured just the opposite from what we would do, and that's probably what they would do. And they treated their own people very, by our standards, very inhumanely. For instance, we were going to the work site one day, and Japanese troops came by on maneuvers. They were out marching, and they had their full packs, their gear, and we always had to get off of the road while they went by. And in this one case, we could see the one slight built private. He is staggering, and it looked as though he was going to go down, and he did eventually. And the sergeant went back and stood there and kicked him in the ribs and about the body, the head, until he finally was able to stagger to his feet. So I thought then, well, if this is the way they treat their own people, why, I don't think we should have any great hopes of what we consider decent treatment.
I see. And how do you account for the fact of surviving? What were your coping mechanisms? How did you get through? You were a POW for how long? Almost 4 years?
Yes.
And how did you survive these constant hard times and these deprivations and the lack of food and the hunger and the threat of being abused?
Well, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, you had youth on your side. That was a big, very big thing. There was never any doubt in our mind that the United States would not win the war. Our only question was how long would it take. And also our military officers insisted on military discipline procedure in the camp, the same as had we been at a base in the United States. And we were always told, he would say, you are still a Marine, you're a part of the 1st Defense Battalion, and don't ever forget that. And I think those things all rolled together helped. And we naturally had plenty of support from home, but the Japanese wouldn't let us take advantage of it. For example, if mail came, sometimes they would distribute it right away. Other times, I think I recall one occasion in the spring of the year, around April, they called us over and showed us this mail piled on a table, but we did not get it until October of that fall. And so as I say, I think summing it up, keeping the military discipline, which at the time seemed rather ridiculous to some of us younger ones, but looking back now, I think that was probably a very good move to make. And as I say, there was never any doubt about the outcome of the war in our mind, and so that probably kept us going more than anything.
What was the scariest experience you had in the camp, as you recall? Any one particular experience that bothered you, that stands out?
Not particularly. I think probably the thing that, as far as recalling events, the first American planes that we saw, I think that was probably was something that any of us will never forget. And to know that that the war was progressing favorably. And
okay. And when you were liberated, how much weight did you lose in the 4 years you were there? About?
At one time on a work detail, when we were building what we were told was the replica of Mount Fujiyama, we were pushing dirt up, and we made this replica of the mountain, if that's what the Japanese insisted it was. Years ago in the American coal mines, you recall,
right,
seeing a mule pulling a cart out of the mine loaded with coal. We were on carts that weren't that big, but at any rate, there were 4 men to a cart, and I recall one time I weighed 95 pounds, and I was the heaviest man on the cart I was working on.
and when you were captured, you weighed about how much?
Probably 150, 155.
155. And could you tell us what a typical day was like in the camp?
Go to work and come back, and
This was hard labor.
Yes, this was for the food rations that we received and the condition we were in. Yes, it was.
And you worked 6 days a week or 7 days a week?
6 days a week.
And was there a spirit of cohesiveness or camaraderie with the other POWs that you were with?
Oh,
Did people get along well together?
Yes. There were flare-ups. I think you could get the thing I remember from all of that really is you get an insight into human nature that you cannot get out of textbooks. For example, one evening we were eating, and we occasionally would get a small loaf of bread. And as I recall, there were 2 very good friends. They were sharing this bread, and one of them went and raised a window, and the bread had been eaten, all of it except some crumbs. There were still some crumbs left from cutting it, the bread, and the wind blew this paper they were on off onto the floor, and the one fellow became very agitated and started swaying at the other one for opening a window and the wind blowing these breadcrumbs on the floor. And of course, as soon as it was over, why, they were still good friends. But you just get an insight into human nature that you would never see under normal conditions.
Could you tell us how you were liberated? What happened when you were liberated? You remember that?
Yes, we were working in the coal mines in northern Japan, about 800 miles north of Tokyo. And one day, as we were to go to work, the shift working ahead of us came out, and we were all set to go, and the Japanese told us we wouldn't go to work that day, that I've forgotten, something had happened to some of the equipment, had broken down, or something of that nature. But the shift that had just come out said there was no problem at all. And so we knew that something was taking place, but we really had no idea what. And then there was a meeting of all of the Japanese that were running our camp, and it lasted for an hour or more, and when they came out, some of them were crying and very visibly upset. And then we knew that something had occurred, something drastic. And I believe that was when, after the bomb had been dropped, the atomic bomb, and the Japanese then agreed to surrender. And in the way of anything formal from them, they called us all together and said that something to the effect that Russia had stabbed them in the back and entered the war and so forth, and that the brave soldiers had to surrender. They did not want to stop fighting, but the emperor had ordered them to lay down their arms, and so the Japanese were surrendering. And then notice arrived. I've forgotten in what form or manner, but we were told to remain where we were, and that there would be a retrieving team come into the camp. The location of the camp was known to Americans, and they would come in and give us instructions on what to do next. But in the meantime, we were to stay there. And so nothing happened. We just waited until I think 2 Army officers came in and gave us the plans for leaving and said we would be told what to do, of course, at that time. And food supplies were dropped by the Americans.
Do you remember when the first time you saw these Americans walking into the camp? How did you feel?
Very happy to see them, and it was, well, I have a feeling, for example, along those lines, I still, every time I see the American flag, I can't help but admire it. In prison camp, we, of course, never saw it except when there was a death, and then it would be brought out for the I shouldn't say services, for the I'm trying to think of the word I want, because there weren't formal funeral services or anything that were permitted. But you just can't imagine not seeing something you take for granted, such as the flag, when you never see it except on very, very few occasions. You really just a feeling that I really can't describe. And of course, naturally, to see Americans, military men, when they came into the camp, it was quite an emotional experience.
You said something about how long did you work in the coal mines?
Just a very short time, approximately a month.
Were the conditions harsh there too?
Terrible there. They were terrible. There was, we had a boy from Pennsylvania with us who had worked in the mines in Pennsylvania, and he said that was horrible. He said a mine like this in the United States, he said, would be closed. He said they would never permit anyone to work in there. When we would be going into the mine and coming out almost daily, there would be rock falling, but fortunately no one was ever injured. It would be behind us or in front of us. And
it must have been very scary being down in the mine.
it was, and I think that that is one of the most fortunate things that could have happened to us short of the war ending, was the fact that we didn't have to work in the mine any longer than the period of time we did, which was approximately 30 days.
Were there any fatalities of people getting killed in the mine?
No.
Okay. After you were liberated, where did you come back to in the United States? What happened?
We got on, we were told that we were going down to Tokyo on by air, C-47s, a plane that was widely used in World War II. And we were about 30 minutes out of Tokyo, and they announced that we were turning around, going back, because a storm had been picked up ahead of us, and the pilots were of this plane were a little bit amused. They said that I think there were about 48 of us on this plane. They said they had flown in far worse conditions with twice that many people aboard during the war, but they were told to not to take any chances and to take us back. So we went back to our original place where we were when the war ended, and then the next day we went by rail and to the coast, and we boarded a ship and went down to Tokyo aboard ship, and that was quite an impressive sight in Tokyo Bay to see all of the warships that were there. We continued from Tokyo by ship to Guam, and on the island of Guam, we still we were airborne again then and flew to Oak Knoll Navy Hospital in Oakland, California. We were there approximately a week, came across country by train to Great Lakes, and we were at Great Lakes for 3 or 4 days, and then we were permitted to go home for 30 days. We were back at Great Lakes, and I was discharged at Great Lakes on February of 1946.
Did you have any debriefings? Did anybody ever talk to you about your experiences?
Yes, but not to the extent that that those things occur now. I have always noticed under any circumstances, you know, the hostages that Iran had a few years ago, you know, or if anyone is detained under unusual circumstances, I read about the debriefing and all. We didn't really have that because I don't think the Japanese practiced it. to some degree, trying to get into your mind. For example, when they would show us the mail we had and then would delay giving it to us for 3 months or so. But at that time, I just don't, I don't think it was, that was as prevalent as it has become now in later years.
Did you ever talk to any mental health people after you were liberated?
Not to any extent. There was a doctor with us. In fact, there were 2 doctors with us who were captured with us, and they cautioned us about being careful with our eating at the time we were released. That you know, we should not load up ourselves on rich food. Our body wasn't accustomed to that, hadn't been for some time, and as I recall, that was the main thing that they stressed.
You never talked about your experiences, your fears, and your...
At that time?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
No.
What did you do after the service? What type of work did you do?
Well, I was raised on a farm, and my parents were living on a farm after the war, and I stayed there with them for probably a year, and then I decided to continue my education, and I started to college, and then after that I worked at various jobs. I was with a food distributing firm, and I worked for the state of Illinois, and after that I worked for a public school district in Illinois.
In what capacity did you work for the state of Illinois?
I was with the Department of Personnel. In 1950, approximately at that time, the state of Illinois began getting away from patronage jobs so much, and they had civil service examinations for many jobs in the state.
How long did you work for the state?
And I worked for them 15 years.
And then what type of work did you do?
And then I went to the public school district.
And what did you do for them?
And I worked there as several different jobs. Director of student housing, truant officer. Eventually the last place I worked there was in maintenance, and so I had about 3 or 4 different jobs with the public school district.
In what district was that?
That was Valley View School District in the towns of Bolingbrook and Romeoville.
And when did you retire?
In August of 1990.
August of 1990. So you worked steadily your whole life?
Pretty much, yes. Right.
And did you marry?
Yes.
And are you currently married?
My wife is deceased.
How long were you married, Mr. Keeler?
23 years.
And do you have any kids?
Yes, 5.
5 children. And how old is the oldest? Just about.
50.
And the youngest?
36.
And any grandchildren?
10.
10 grandchildren. And do they know about your experiences?
I think so, yeah.
Well, they certainly, hopefully, will be able to see a copy of this videotape to see what a hero their grandfather and their dad is and was. And was your marriage, how would you describe your marriage? Was it satisfactory to you?
Very good.
And your wife passed away, when was that?
In 1985.
And what happened to her?
Heart.
She was a relatively young lady at that time.
Yes.
Very sorry. And are you close with your kids?
Yes.
And you live right now, where do you live, in what city?
I live in Joliet, Illinois.
And you see your grandkids a lot?
Pretty much, yes. Pretty frequently.
And how would you say that the POW experiences affected you throughout your life, if you were just to look at it that way?
Well, it's made me aware of we don't really know what a good life we have, and I think you become aware that things you take for granted, you no longer do so.
Are you troubled by any sort of reoccurring dreams or flashbacks from these experiences?
Well,
Nightmares?
to some degree, but I would say it isn't anything that I can't have it and cannot continue to handle.
Okay. And you mentioned before we started the interview you do use VA services, and what kind of VA services do you use?
I'm an outpatient at Hines, and I get medication here. Uh, as you are, I'm sure, are aware that now there are primary care centers
Right.
at different places. There is one in Joliet. So far, routine blood workups and so forth. I go to Joliet for that, but I receive my medication there. But I come here for dental work. And
Are you, have you ever been involved in our PTSD program here with at CLAMA, or have you ever had any sort of therapy for PTSD?
I talked to Ed probably in the late 80s, and that is when, as a result of that, was when my disability started.
Or were you in ongoing therapy, or you just had an evaluation?
No, it was an evaluation, which consisted of a couple of meetings with him, and then, of course, physical by doctors.
How satisfied have you been with VA services throughout the years?
Good, good. I particularly, I had a lip shave, a lower lip shave, by a Dr. Lawrence, who was head of the oral surgery department here at that time. I'm speaking of 1983, and I have received numerous compliments on the job that he did. People tell me that so many lip shaves, for example, tends to be very noticeable, a droop at the corners, and so forth. A friend of mine who was interned with me said that he paid $7,500 in Dallas for a lip shave. He said, I'm very sorry. He said, I would never have gotten it had I known it was going to turn out as it did. And so in that one particular instance, I'm extremely well pleased.
Well, you were a good-looking guy before, and you're even better looking now.
Well, thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
I don't think so. Much, was made of the defense of Wake Island, and it was actually somewhat of an embarrassment that the island held out as long as it did, because I think it was known there was no way the island could be defended successfully, and they actually there were people, of course, clamoring, to send help and do something, and there wasn't much that could be done at the time. And so I don't know, you just get a very broad perspective of a lot of things when you have time to think about it, and to see things that occur under duress or extreme conditions that you wouldn't normally see.
Okay. Want to thank you for participating in this project, and you will probably be getting a research questionnaire that we'll ask you to fill out and mail back to us sometime in the future.
All right.
If there's any questions you have or thoughts about this interview, you have my card. Again, on behalf of the Veterans Administration and myself personally, John Renda and Wendy Warren, who is our social work intern here, we want to thank you very much for participating.
Thank you.
And we're privileged to have you.
Thank you.